Cool. Yeah. So thanks for everyone for hopping in. This is our bi-weekly office hours. If you haven't been here before, usual structure: we cover a topic. Keep an eye out in the events channel. Usually on Tuesdays, we throw out a post, and then there's a couple options for you to emoji vote and pick a topic to cover. This week we have what one here? Okay, I get thrown off when the numbers are low because it's like, was this option three or did three people vote? But yeah, it was a single chain boost via decentralized solutions. So like I said, the general structure, I'll run through the topic kind of from the team perspective, what we're working on, why things are kind of done, what the decision making kind of was in the background, and then leave time for questions. I'll be here and around for an hour. We'll try to keep it focused on that topic, but there's open if there's other questions at the end with extra time, we'll leave that open. There is feel free, anyone at any time, put your hand up and pop up here and ask questions, chat. If you are not comfortable talking verbally or just more comfortable asking questions and want to ask stuff via chat, there's an office hours discussion channel, a couple channels above this. So just toss your questions in there. I'll be popping back in there periodically to address whatever pops up in there. I will address messages that are on topic first, and then, like I said, if there's a free time, then just kind of going through whatever else is in there. So load it up. But yeah, so this topic, obviously we launched. I guess this was our third chain launch when we launched on Swapper. We did Binance Smart Chain a while back. That was when we had the old Boost, but we didn't actually have Boost enabled on Binance Smart Chain. And if you're around for that, it was kind of it was a real flash in the pan time. There's Binance BSC got really hot for a bit and then kind of pulled back. So we launched there and then had some rewards, but then it was other protocols were kind of being competing and throwing more tokens at stuff, and we learned stuff. I wouldn't say it was the most successful launch, but we learned something from that. Then we launched on Polygon, but never really expanded beyond just doing some test vaults. And really, Polygon, our launch there was a testing ground to be prepared to launch on Arbitrum. So to kind of get a rep under our belt of launching on a new chain, but we didn't have plans at the time of launch for what we were going to kind of do after. And we are looking into that now and having discussion with the community about what we're going to do with, on Polygon moving forward. There's some yield available. It's not massive opportunities. Just trying to weigh the cost benefit for, maintaining vaults there, launching more vaults there, etc. So then we launched on Arbitrum. I guess it's, a month or so ago at this point. It's really impossible to keep track, but that was the one that we wanted to make a big splash on. We did pretty good. We launched some Curve vaults that Curve was emitting there, and we got those up and running, threw some Badger emissions on them. We got, I think we peaked at like 50 million in TVL, and people flowing in. We actually were. Boost in its current iteration is managed off chain. So all the calculations are done off chain. So what that means though is that we have to have this relationship and connection between off chain and on chain. So the most common way to do that now is through the graph. And so the way that things were structured is that we're like, hey, we'll launch and we'll just have, your boost will persist across chains. We'll keep track of all your Badger across all chains, and all chains in this scenario was ETH and Arbitrum. And then we'll keep track of your Badger across all chains. We'll keep track of your non-native balances, your Bitcoin balances on all chains, and your boost will be the same wherever you are. And I think that was nice. For the people that already had decent boost, you could pop over to Arbitrum and still get a decent boost on your deposits there. What we quickly realized is that the maintaining the boost and the structure of the boost, this kind of off-chain, on-chain connection through the graph was difficult, and there was the graph itself is kind of a discrete point of failure. So when the graph goes down, we can't show appropriate yield. We can't distribute the badger to folks, and it just creates a lot of problems. And there's nothing really we can do about it, which is tough. So we had a lot of discussions about, how do we make things right out of the gate, and then what do we do going forward? So what we kind of settled on is, this off-chain on-chain thing isn't really getting solved anytime soon. We want to be able to launch on new chains. I think the community wants to be able to launch on new chains and have new vaults, but doing so, and then if we are trying to maintain our own graph nodes or take more ownership of that, it's just going to mean a lot more people and a lot more resources to support all of these various chains, and there might not even be that much meat on the bone. We don't know. Arbitrum was great; it was a good splash. We're all still pretty bullish there on the potential and how the ecosystem will grow, but it's just going to take time. And to have one or two people kind of on that full time, and putting the resources into kind of running all our own stuff would be probably not cost effective. And I think there were some other. I'm not in the weeds on the technical details of it, but there's some other issues with the general structure of the boost, as far as by doing it off chain, that kind of made it more of a pain to manage long term, and especially as we grew and we were putting in more complicated logic, and then we're going to be across 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chains, maybe eventually many months down the road. It's just going to get harder and harder to maintain and kind of identify issues and fix issues and things like that. So the decision was made to then move Boost to being on-chain, so do it all in smart contracts. And the kind of the implication of that is that we can't, since it's all on-chain, it can't be, the multiple chains can't be, they're not by default communicating with one another. So we can't really have the Boost live across all these chains and be the same and persist and be synchronized across all of them. So that was one of the main kind of deciding factors about kind of taking this direction. And then we it also just makes things easier for us for maintaining it long term. And I don't think it's really necessarily a bad thing for users either, because you can kind of go all in on a chain. You can manage your positions for one chain versus another chain. Creates make a more level playing field for when we launch on a new chain, when people come in and either have to kind of move your badger over, or maybe start with less badger or no badger, and then it's more of a flat distribution of emissions, and then you can kind of build up your boost over time natively there. And there is going to be some change. I do believe there are going to be some changes to the boost. I don't know when exactly those are going to come. We have some discussions going in boost adjustments about trying to make some tweaks to make it more accessible for new users, so they're not coming in with zero boost and just not never getting any badger and then kind of being behind the 8 ball. So doing some things there that will probably then one nice thing about having chain specific boosts is we can do some experiments with boost. So if we wanted to try some tweaks or changes to boost logic, we can do it on one chain and not on the other chains. We don't have to kind of risk. There's a lower risk if it's just over here where there's $20 million versus over on ETH where there's $600 million. So there's gives us a lot more flexibility in that way. And I think, especially if we make it so that when you move over and it's more of a flat, can be more of a flat distribution, you go over to a new chain, you start earning more badger, then the boost enacts, and we can even play around with having that ratio or that impact kind of adjust over time. Maybe we start things where it's more flat and then it becomes more boost heavy down the line. There's a lot we can do, and kind of going that way. So where we are kind of internally right now is building out this new fully on-chain structure. We're calling it vaults. There's a lot of stuff around vaults 1.5, so it's kind of restructuring. Or we launched initially using a fork of Urine vaults, and then we looked at using the Urine v2 vaults, where it's kind of a multi-strategy associated with one vault structure. We kind of ended up moving kind of away from that in the end. And I don't think it's necessarily as relevant because Bitcoin isn't as spread out. And now Volt, kind of Volt's 1.5, at least in the way I think about it, is we've been around for Badger's been around for 9, 10, however many months now, I guess 10 months. And it's okay. What do we need? How have we grown as a product and a protocol and a team and a DAO? And how can we now make this, the Vault infrastructure, which is the core product of what we do, that feeds everything. It's the baseline product that feeds IPBTC that, is we have Boost associated with it. So that drives value in the token. It's the core thing that we do. How do we make this something that's, more tailored to what we need for our business and for, our team and for maintenance. So that's where we are. There's no set time on when, Vault's 1.5 will be done. I think all the timelines right now are a little in the air because we're trying to, hustle and, secure vote weight in the convex ecosystem. There's kind of like this land grab right now for getting locked convex and things like that, so we can secure higher yield. And it's it's just the nature of the beast where we have to respond to the environment, respond to the industry when things like this happen, and we have to move quickly and kind of put other stuff on hold or reallocate resources. So I think we're getting better at breaking down ownership and who's owning what, and being able to kind of hopefully run a couple different threads at the same time and keep moving forward. But it's a really big focus on convex right now, and then we have Volt 1.5, and then this kind of complete on-chain Boost structure that during this time we're also specifically Mitch is taking a look at how everyone else around the space does emits tokens, and trying to be very thoughtful and knowledgeable about the change, because it's going to be a big change. It's going to be a lot of work, but we don't want to have to do this again immediately. So we want to try to do it right. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown. Happy to go in any other topics. Feel free to put your hand up if you want to chat. I don't know if anyone else from the team wants to come up and add any details to what I just shared. I'll hop over in the chat right now and see what's going on. Hash for voting rights for cross-chain. That's a good question. I don't. My assumption is that Snapshot is ETH only and can't really track Badger and other chains. I don't know if Mitch, if you have know better or worse, if you want to pop up or toss in the chat. Popsicle did it. Okay. I mean, yeah, if you're using Snapshot, if we can get it. Omni asks possibility of something like Ren Badger. That's a good question. I don't know. For Ren, they're gonna have the, it's like this perpetual soon. Well, if you see, I think Tritium's got his hand up. I don't think I have the rights to do it.
He's coming.
Yeah. So, there's some issues around the cross-chain voting. Like, we'd like to figure it out, but there's some security concerns which aren't absolute because it's not on-chain voting. But like, if we run a snapshot and then it gets like hacked, and we have to say like, oops, like people like hacked your governance, and we're gonna do it again, that doesn't look great. And so you better do it right the first time.
And that's not really aligned with our. We're trying to get to where we can actually have more like legit on-chain stuff driven by governance. Like right now, it could be like, okay, well, if it gets hacked, like whatever, it's just a signal, we can redo it. But like that's definitely not aligned with like the next phase that we want to tackle with that.
I mean, that's going to be a while. The reality is that like for signaling, which I think we'll use snapshots for a long time, right? It would certainly be good to get everyone, right? And so, the real challenge, it's the same thing with Boost. Like the real challenge here is like cross-chain messaging, right? So how do you get data between chains, and then like, where are the vulnerabilities in that, right? And like, that's kind of like what Popsicle's working on. That's like what I guess not Popsicle so much anymore, but the point is, or that's what they were working on. That is a really complicated thing, and it's, like an evolving space, and there aren't answers yet that are super clear. And that whole space is something that requires a lot of focus. And like, if we wanted to make that a competency, we could build a whole team around like, how do we get, like on-chain messaging working well and get data moved between chain. I don't think personally, like right now, for like what Badger is and where it's at, it makes sense for us to like invest in that direction, right? So it makes more sense to like split or boost to keep the chains isolated, right? To until we have centralized governance to like look at how we can like build snapshots that can work across chains for signaling, right? And then like as we move towards on-chain governance, which I think at the beginning won't need incredible amounts of Badger, right? But then we do have to figure that out someday. But I just don't think like, like if we were to figure out how to do like cross-chain voting and on-chain, like that would be bleeding edge. We would be like super innovative in that space, but I think it's all we do. And it makes more sense to like let somebody else that's more focused on that figure it out and then use that technology.
Yeah, well, it'd be ideal if Snapshot figures it out, and then just like, hey, like you can configure your contract to accept
I mean, they
whatever.
have kind of. I mean, Snapchat's not going to figure it. Snapchat has to be able to get the data from another chain, right? So like Snapshot can't know. I mean, I guess Snapshot, because it is off chain, could go query all of these chains, and maybe there's a way to do that. I think there are people that have done it with Snapshot. Right,
Yeah,
like the reality of like putting up a bounty, if we could define exactly what we wanted, I think we could probably find somebody to like build out some sort of a snapshot solution, right? It'd still be some work. That's definitely doable. But in terms of like on chain, there's just so much risk in like passing information between chains right now, and none of the tech is really like well audited and well known and safe.
yeah. And I mean, the timing of everything is tricky, right? Like you can't even do like, oh, we just take like regular snapshots because then people can like move funds, and yeah, it's tough. So yeah, I was only saying snapshot because of their whole thing's governance, and all these governance tokens are all going cross chain. It seems like it would be good for them to support that. But we'll see. I think we're on the same boat where it's like, yeah, it'd be great if someone else solves that and then we can use it.
And to me, the first step with governance, we need to work on governance, right? Because you've got this Rari pool now that's on ETH, and there's this smart contract that's used to determine how much people can vote for. So I think if we could get a bounty up or find someone, or if anybody to start working on that, right? So just start with like, like also support these additional places where there's Badger, and then maybe also like thinking about, I know like Hashare is thinking about like dips, and so like there's some like looking for dig and doing that, right? So if we could get somebody working on that coding part of the governance, then maybe we would have somebody that could start exploring how to do that on other chains. And we've put a few bounties out, but surprisingly, like nobody really takes them. Maybe it's because we haven't been clear enough, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the interesting thing is like I feel like once you kind of figure that out, then you can almost have, if you have the cross-chain communication, then they would obviously those same contracts could, or that same mechanism could be used to communicate boost weight across chain, right? So it's kind
Well,
of
no. Well, if Boost isn't on chain, right? Remember, Snapshot's not on chain. So Snapshot goes into
fair.
snapshots, you collect all this information, and then it's there, and then like our multi-sig does something based on what it says, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, and that's how the Boost works right now, right? Is that it's all happening off chain, right?
yeah,
And then the problem is that when you've got the multi-chain Boost, like if one data source somewhere is off, right, then like you don't know what to do, and so you have to make some assumption or not make some assumption or do something. And then with every chain there's a whole bunch more data sources, and there's a whole lot more instability, and you just get to the point where like there's always a little fire somewhere, and if that little fire causes the whole thing to be broken and all of our users to be miserable and people to be aping into pools that have far, like it creates so much noise and uncertainty that it's just kind of, yeah, that's one problem, right? And then the second problem is when we actually do try to, as we are trying to actually move all of this stuff on chain, you then run into the bigger problem, which is cross-chain communications, which will get sorted out in the next 2 years, right? Like, I mean, this will happen, but it's just not, I'm not sure we want to be the ones to figure it out, right? Like we've got other things to focus on.
And obviously a lot of us are, some of us are Ren enthusiasts here, and I know like the host to host is coming, where and that was Omni's question in the chat about will like Ren Badger be a thing? So basically like it's like the one bridge to rule them all, right? So it's like instead of going, okay, I want to get to this chain, which bridge do I use? Like, is it what kind of bridge is this? Like, it's kind of all over the place. You could just use Ren and be like, I'm going to go from ETH to Solana or from ETH to Avalanche or whatever, Avalanche to Polygon. Like, you can just use one bridge and move all around. I don't know exactly how, because when you get into the bridge details, it actually gets kind of funky where you need to like approve, the tokens themselves have to have like, if you're going to have the actual same token over there, it's got to have like, mint and burn rights, and maybe that can change for chain to chain or bridge to bridge for how things are done. So I don't know with the host to host, like, is it all going to be, Ren, like, Badger will all just be locked on the Ren side, and then it's just Ren Badger that exists that'll actually be a different token address we might have to account for in different capacities. Be very interested to see how that all plays out once it's like out and live, and then that also begs the question of that we'll have not just minting ability, but the ability to communicate arbitrary messages from one chain to another. So maybe that'll enable some things, but that has to get out and live, and then we'll play with it.
Maybe because like maybe you're talking about something different, but like Ren now, for example, on Arbitrum, right? I've bridged it and it's cool. So like you can't bridge Ren BTC from Bitcoin to Arbitrum, right? Because they're separate tokens. So like if you want to move Ren from ETH to ARB, what you actually have to do is open up two bridge transactions, right? You open a bridge in on ARB and a bridge out on ETH, and you basically release from the outgoing bridge onto the ingoing bridge. So there isn't like these two things are like totally separate and only
right. Well,
communicate.
that's what's coming out soon. Ideally, I think it was supposed to be in October, in September. I don't know exactly when.
Okay, so they're working on a next step there, where then all of this is somehow like one token that magically moves around. It will be.
Yeah.
It will be amazing when it happens, and then like I want to see it work for a year without anybody taking any money, right? Because so far everybody that's like tried to do this, like that's all of the huge hacks now, right? Remember, I forget who it was, but someone got drained for like $600 million or something, right? And like exactly on this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So obviously, like I said, like a lot of us are Ren enthusiasts, and they've been working on it for many years. Hopefully, it works. I'm definitely on the same page as you, where it's like, let's get it out, get it live, let a lot of money flow through it, let some other people build on it. We can build some smaller things on it, and like, let's feel it out. And then before we go like all in and like, have, 60% of Badger locked up as Ren Badger and like floating around all these different chains. Like, we don't, that's not great if that goes south. Cool. Is there anything else in here in the discussion channel? Yeah. So it's it's definitely gonna be a trade-off, and the way I think about it is it's still like all these chains are still very new right now. It's still very just like ETH is ETH. That's like the big dog, and then everything else is kind of ancillary. Like, that can change over time, but I think that's just kind of like the mindset is, it's Ethereum for the foreseeable future is going to be the home base. It's probably going to be where most of the yield is. It's probably going to be where most of the TVL is. It's where governance is going to be. And then, some of these other things can pop up and have large TVL for a bit. And then, it seems like, that's the cadence. There's some hype, there's some launches, money flows in, then there's a bit of a pullback. And then, we're going to see what kind of bubbles to the top and sticks around over the next, 3 to 6, 12 months. And, once that happens, there'll be stickier liquidity, stickier rewards, stickier products. So, hopefully the infrastructure will become more stable and we'll be there. And then, maybe that's when it makes more sense to put some more effort into figuring out how to have all this stuff work more cohesively across chain. Because, right now it's like, if we put a lot of effort into maintaining and being the best and like having cross chain boost and doing all this stuff on like Binance Smart Chain, like that would all just be dead work right now, because it would just be, there's nothing really going on over there at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a governance point of view, but like it's doable. It's just work, and it's work to focus on. So like from my point of view, our problem in governance, and it is a problem kind of, is like there's 10 million Badger in circulation, and we do a BIP and we get like 250,000 votes, right? So it's not the best representation. So like one of the things that I'm trying to work on is like building the snapshot thing into the site, or at least like having a banner that comes up and says like, hey, there's a snapshot running. And so like in my mind, like when it makes sense to really start thinking, again, on a governance point of view, which is separate from Boost, right? But like when we see that like there's 20% of the Badger on another chain, or when it's clear to us that like a large amount of the Badger that is going to vote is on another chain, right? Then that makes sense. But I think the first thing with governance we need to do is just get more people voting. And then like it matters. But right now it's just kind of like it's really the ultimate in governance theater, right? In that we've got like, I don't know, like less than 1% of Badger responding on votes. And that's the bigger issue that we need to figure out.
Yeah, agreed. Just even the language we're using, where it's like, yeah, we're working on this. This is our priority, and yada yada yada. And we're just kind of speaking from the perspective of the team. And I think in general, the team's pretty connected with and aligned with the community. But it'd be great to kind of have that memorialized in the kind of voting behavior. And I think if we get more more participation and quicker participation, we can kind of get these feedback loops. Because right now, we're kind of shooting from the hip, kind of on prioritizations and things like that. And, it's hard because there's a lot of information coming in, and it's hard to make these nuanced decisions on where to prioritize, week to week, day over day. But we're kind of getting, teams kind of driving a lot of that, trying to keep the team, the community very informed in like the RFFs and BIPs and things. But I think we would all like to have the community feel like they have more control, and be very well informed to help us make those decisions around prioritization. So like I said, this we're kind of pulling back on we have the stuff on chain, and we're kind of saying like, all right, let's start compartmentalizing that stuff so we can then still go to these other chains and not have it be a huge burden on the team to do so. And figuring out how to make merge everything back together, like that's just going to have to be on the back burner for a while, because we have Convex and IBTC and a whole host of other things that we want to that we feel are more important and more impactful to tackle first. Yeah, delegation options. Yeah, that's interesting. Badger boost based on voting. Huh. Yeah, that would be, it's so hard to find anything that's not gameable, which is it's tough. He's like, you don't want. I think there's something with delegation, and we're trying to do the council. As Tritium said in the chat, we're going to put vote. We're going to put like BIP and snapshot votes like in the app, so you see it at the top, which would be nice. And then having, I think delegation is something interesting. Like we're kind of going that route with the governance 2.0 proposal, which is basically just kind of re-electing a new council with like a updated mandate. But yeah, maybe that's something we could look into as kind of like a follow on with that, because part of the mandate of the new council will be to kind of figure out governance, and maybe they focus on delegation as a component. Nelson, you asked about the NFT boost. Yeah, that'll be on Ethereum. I don't know if because all the NFTs are on Ethereum, so we wouldn't, and there aren't like NFT bridges, so that'll be on there. That's one of the other things that was getting close and then kind of put on the pause. The goal, I think, is to roll that out as part of. There's a proposal in the NFT RFF, NFT boost RFF, and I think we've kind of settled on a solution. We just got to get some of the specifics, which would basically just be giving each NFT like a Badger value, and then we just have to maintain that Badger value for now. But then capping that Badger value on the amount of Badger that you have. Then there's a couple of components that might play into when we launch that. One is if we want to do it as part of like boost adjustments or around locking, a Badger locking scenario. I'm just kind of going through the chat here too. Let's talk about rewarding governance is tricky. But I understand that like it can help. It's just maybe we have to figure out the right kind of reward.
Well, that to me is a really interesting question, right? Because like what you see happening right now in Convex in this curve space, right, is that like governance is being rewarded by bribery, right? But that does mean that like everybody's voting, and then the people that are encouraging people to vote are like telling people what to vote for, right? And I think
it's like delegation.
Well, it's part of it. Part of it's delegation. I mean, again, like there's the bribery component, and you can delegate somebody else to go like use your votes to make you the most bribes, right?
Also, the key component of
But
that is the votes are a very set and specific thing. All it's voting for is emissions in this direction versus that direction. Like that's like I know that there can be bribes, I think, for other types of votes, but it's 100% focused right now on like this complete subset of
no,
governance decisions.
no, like I mean, I there was a bribe up last week to add gauges, right? So I think like somebody wanted gauges on Phantom. I think it was like Alchemix or something, right? And they paid a whole bunch in bribes to just get people to like vote to add those gauges into the system. So, I'm not saying that it's what we should do, but I guess the point is that like the way somebody else said it. If you just pay people to vote, then they're just going to go vote garbage, right? And so you are better off if you want to pay people for voting. You're better off having other people find a way to pay people for you to vote. And then I think, as John pointed out, like that's bad because we don't have like a narrow band of decisions, right? Like we're making lots of different decisions, and we really don't want we don't want to be in this like scummy bribing environment where there's like a bunch of like secret back actors like doing backroom deals and trying to like manipulate the protocol, right? That's, I think, the opposite of what Badger wants to be. So in my mind, we just need to make more people see the governance, make it visible. I think the ideas about delegation are great, right? So like even having a few different delegations, you like delegate to Poe, delegate to like the council, delegate to the team, right? Having a few different authorities, or what you see in Vodium, right? Having like some different personas. So delegate for the like low emissions. Like I believe Badger's going to go up if we never emit any and never spend any, right? And I'm going to very conservatively vote on Badger, and then the hey, like let's just like spray all of our tokens out into the world. So you could create personas and have people that own those personas and allow people to delegate to them, and that could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name of the protocol. It's got like an X in the name or something like that. It's like, but you can do like SNXX or XSNX, where it's like it's staked synthetics token, but they'll have like A, B, and C version of it, where like A always votes to reduce the collateral factor, and it's a totally separate token. You earn the staking rewards, and it's just programmed that anytime there's a vote for a staking factor, like a collateral factor or whatever, it always votes on the reduce side, which is kind of interesting. But we would have to have much more clear classifications of votes to do stuff like that. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think I don't know, like incentivizing delegation, and maybe we just have because you have to have like curation and then
Oh, bad, bad,
full
bad.
decision.
I am actually like, I mean, I'm spending all my time thinking about it, but I'm pretty anti-bribery. I'm pretty anti
Yeah,
like paying people for votes, right? Like people should vote because they care about the protocol. They should know that it's happening, right? So like if you're on our DApp, you should see that like there's this voting thing, and that should be like part of the whole experience. But then people should participate in it because they want to. And there should be some light option where people can delegate somewhere, right, to have their votes counted based on like a few simple decisions. I agree with that, but then I'm very, very, very much against like this bribery bullshit, right? Unless it's like how are we emitting over our Bitcoin pools, right? If we could maybe someday separate our emissions out
right.
into something, but like just general like governance is as we conduct it is definitely nothing that should be subject to like bribery. And if we see it, we should like deal with it and see it as a security problem, not as something good.
What's your take on including like non-native as some factor in vote weight?
Sorry, one more time.
So like including your non-badger, your like Bitcoin deposits as not necessarily like, oh, this counts dollar for dollar, but like
No, no.
some
What's the point?
some
Badger's the governance coin. If
yeah,
we're
no,
not
no,
a governance
no.
token, is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, this is spitball mode, but it would still be like your badger, but maybe in
No, 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 no. I think it makes like so. There's a few situations. I think it makes a lot of sense to ask token holders for signaling, right? So like they're talking about setting up this dig snapshot so that the dig community can run a bunch of snapshots and figure out what people want and put together a proposal to bring to governance with data. I think that makes sense, right? Like we've been thinking about there may be some like other situations where I think like a separate governance authority system multi-sig. So like one example we're thinking about right now is like bribing. And if BLCVX can vote, and there may be times when BLCVX can make various shit coins, right? Like while still voting for Bitcoin. So there's the opportunity for BLCVX to make revenue in various like shit coins that like God knows what to do with them. Right. And so like in this case, setting up a multi-sig and putting that all somewhere and saying like the BLCVX holders can vote on what to do with the emissions from BLCVX. Right, like maybe that makes sense, but I think we need to really be careful to keep Badger as, Badger rules all. I think that was one of the first things on our website, and I think it still should be.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think through incentives that you can do that aren't just pure money. Like, you can always have something where the more you vote in, the more consecutive votes you do, or more votes you've done in the past X period of time, the higher your vote weight in the next vote or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to. I think like I just think everybody in my mind the biggest thing is that it's like our voting process is clunky, right? So like there's this whatever, but once it's at Snapchat, like once there's just a vote, you go there and then there's usually something that like links to a form where there's a bunch of conversation and like what you're voting for isn't super clear. And then you don't really find out about it unless you're like following Badger on Twitter or happen to be in our Discord. Right. And like where I'd like to see it get is like votes hopefully are up for like a week, not 2 or 3 days, because we're planning a little bit better. And then at the top of our page, there's just something that says like, hey, there's a vote, go here. And then it's like hopefully in our app and it looks nice. And like it can all still be a snapshot, but there's like one page that explains like this is what it is, make your vote. And I think like just that we'd end up with like over 1 million votes per snapshot.
Well, yeah, I guess to roll it back, I mean, I think we do have a decent plan. One is do that. One is just have it easier for people to access and put it in their face, and not in a way that's going to piss them off, but like be like, oh, cool, like I'm already here. Let me just click this, pop up, vote, boom, done. The other thing I think is just reducing, better segmenting, and maybe reducing the amount of votes that we need, and having good information and better, proposals put together and easier to understand. And that's where the council comes in, the new council, right? We move towards like it's kind of a delegate in that these people get voted in, and they can handle a lot of the a number of decisions that maybe we would have gotten to vote otherwise. We can have them make decisions, but then have veto votes, as you discussed. That adds like another layer. And then when we are bringing votes, governance decisions, hopefully it's presented better because we have people who are kind of more focused on that.
Agreed.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. I mean, I also think like, Snapchat is fundamentally a signaling tool, right? So the way that our governance works is we use the signaling tool. We have a multi-sig that is better than most in the business, I think, at listening to the signaling tool. Not as good as Convex, right? Like they listen to every signal and they execute immediately. We're a bit slow sometimes, but we do follow what our signal says. Right. As you start moving towards the council, right, there is a lot of questions about like what and when to signal, right? So is what the council should be doing, putting up like a 5-sentence BIP on the site every week or survey and like regularly collecting signals and then putting together like proposals that maybe need to be BIPs or don't even need to be BIPs because they're already backed up by like a bunch of signals, right? And I think a lot of that is just understanding how people want to engage with governance, right? So once you've got a council there and it's like, well, let's try big BIPs, or is it the case that if we ask a question every 3 days that then like people are coming back and it's bringing people to protocol and getting them more engaged? Like I just don't have the time to think about all these. But I think once we get the council, like there's a lot of interesting when you step back from what we're doing and just think about all these components and what they represent. There's so many like cool potentials.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's kind of experimenting with it, so obviously we'll keep eyes on what's happening around the industry and see where things happen. But yeah, I mean, the other point in the chat was that it's low voter turnout isn't a Badger specific problem. I think we just want to figure out like what's good and what's sufficient, and what's if everyone felt fine that having 100,000 Badgers show up for each vote was was sufficient for the types of decisions that we're making, then like, okay, cool, like that's fine. And I don't think many people necessarily would believe that when there's, I don't know, like 10 million floating around, circulating. We can do better. I think it's always good to strive to do better, but I think the main thing obviously is just does the community feel like it's driving the project, and the team is acting appropriately and feel like they have some kind of control over things. So that's if they don't, then the token really loses all value. And what the heck are we doing here? Cool. The hash, I guess, asks for when ARB will be reboosted. We're trying to make hash on them. We're trying to make a decision real quick on, I guess, how much we want to boost. I think we're going to play around on ARB with doing some flat emissions, some boosted emissions, and then I'm not sure when the work that's necessary to do ARB specific boost.
Yeah, I think the situation is that this, like, we realized there was a problem, right? And that there was uncertainty on the chain, and there were like people depositing money and not like and having, and so like there was a feeling last Friday that we really just needed to get something out to like let people know that something was up, right? And we did that. I think now, like this week, we launched VECVX. We've got to wrap this product up. There's a lot of comms. Like, it's super important that we do that. And so that's kind of more in focus for this week. And it's realistically probably more like next week that we'll get to splitting the chains and figuring out ARB. So like, I think, yeah, like more should come out next week, and hopefully like we'll have like something clear and certain there by end of next week.
Swapper pools, do we have some going?
Yeah, swapper pools are going today. Like, I think in the next few hours there'll be like some swapper pools. I don't know about Badger, but I think like Bitcoin ETH and swapper ETH.
Yeah, 2 of them are going live today.
Okay.
And then 2 of them are going live next week. Okay,
That's
that
right.
one. BTC and swapper. I don't know which one.
Basically, like, we've got some swapper pools that are like swappers L token and then Bitcoin this week, and then next week we're gonna do like Badger.
Yeah, and there'll be guarded launches on those guys today, and those will just be regular, get them and then stake them at swapper kind of deal. Or no, you deposit.
You deposit in swapper, and it's like like sushi, right? You get
LP. Yeah, we are working with that, and like this did throw off. We had initial plans with them with Swapper to actually have Badger exclusive emissions. They were going to actually give us the Swapper to distribute, which would have been cool. But like with how unstable everything was, we had to kind of pull back on that. So they'll just be distributing it through their staking contract. So it's meaning that you could just go and get it at Swapper, but if you go through Badger, we do the auto compounding and all that good stuff. And they've been cool to work with. The DXDAO team has been around for a long time. A number of us have had interactions with them throughout the years. So I think that's going to be a good partnership for us going forward. Hopefully, once we get ARB boosties going, we can do some more fun stuff with them. Experiment. They're definitely down to try some stuff, and they're doing some cool stuff with their DAO too. It's launched by DXDAO, who's one of the definitely more of an old school DAO in relative terms. Like, they've been around for I don't know, like 3 or 4 years. They're originally focused on. They did a bunch of stuff with Gnosis early on, and still doing some stuff with Gnosis and engage, deploy products there. So they're very DAO forward. I think this is going to be their biggest, the first like really foray into like a application focused DAO, like a separate thing with a new token. So pretty cool. Be looking forward to working with them kind of over the next couple months, see what we can do to kind of play around with some stuff on ARB. I think they're talking about using the token down the line to actually maybe drive some emissions, decisions and things like that. So I think we'll be accumulating some swapper to the fees, and it'd be cool for folks to accumulate swapper. Hopefully, it has some good potential. They've definitely put a lot of thought. They've shared some like preliminary stuff on their tokenomics. So they definitely got some stuff in the works that'll hopefully make it a good valuable token to hold onto. But overall, it'd be cool, if they can keep going, and if Arbitrum can be a decent ecosystem for a little bit, we can kind of keep working with them now that we're live and hopefully get the boost stuff stable. Oh, Will just crushing people's dreams with no POAP. Sorry, everybody, no POAP today, I guess. Cool. We got about 10 minutes.
That's why there's no attendance, right? We stopped handing out POAPs, and now there's only people that are actually interested in what we're saying in our meetings.
50 is not bad. I don't know if we ever hit 100 on office hours. We peaked in the 80s, maybe.
80s, I think. Yeah. Dig Dojo got over 100 a couple times.
Man.
Yeah, we're going to work on that.
Well, I mean, if I get more people in here, then we get voting on Snapshot. No, I'm just joking. I think we get I don't know the pure numbers of voting bodies.
You mean on topics or on?
On snapshots. Now, the thing is, I guess if we talked about, if we're having more office hours meetings, or at least doing them weekly, we can like hammer open. Like if we're having longer vote windows and we're having more of these regular meetings, like, I'm assuming a lot of the people here are at their computer at the moment. We can just, force them to go, not force them, but strongly encourage voting while we're talking to them directly.
That's a good idea, like a POAP for voting. Maybe we should just automatically send everybody that votes a POAP every time. We just need somebody to do it. But like, anybody want to do it? We can sanction it if you figure it out.
Yeah, so I want to make a nice little BIP graphic thing for, just put the number on it.
And somebody's like actually got a deal, because the problem is like once you start giving people freaking POAPs for voting, like the first time that like you have a vote and there's not POAPs, it'll be like 500 people on our Discord being like, "Where's my POAP?" And I'll get like screens full of DMs. And so like if we're gonna do it, it's got to work every time, and nobody has to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think POAPs are interesting in general as a concept. Like, I think there's a lot of value to having some incentive for attending meetings. I mean, even if you weren't already interested in the subject matter, but ended up learning something, I think that's the upside. But obviously the downside being anytime you incentivize something passive like this, like, are you really getting engaged people, right? And brings back to the discussion you guys are already having around just incentivizing voting in general.
Yeah, the thing I like about the POAPs is like you can eventually kind of maybe use them to identify engaged community members, where you can't just be like, oh, you get 20 voting POAPs and then you get some special privilege or something or some benefit. But if you have office hours POAP and Dig Dojo POAP and voting POAP, like you can kind of start being like, well, that's most likely a person. Like it's hard for a bot to bot all that or to attack it in some way. So I think once you start doing that, then you can once you can shake out some of that civil stuff, then I think you can start experimenting with more benefits around voting or adding incentives for other things, because it's at least a person. It makes it less gameable. But that's something we got to do. Cool. All right. Well, we're coming up on time. Unless anything else wants to touch about. I think 1500. You mentioned having chats for BIPs. I'm definitely down with that. We kind of are going that way. I guess we now have like the RFFs, which I think we've just kind of tried to move the BIP conversations to like pre-BIP. Let's hash out the details in Discord versus like posting the BIP and then dealing with like the weird structure of forum comments. And not everyone's living in forums anyway. They're more likely to be in Discord. And then hopefully having like less of that. So we can definitely have pre-votes, and we'll have to see how we want to set it up. We had been having I feel like things come in like bunches for like our BIPs, but I'm definitely down to host a number of them as we kind of go forward and have make sure that there's like text-based information gathering, and then leave that open, post the BIP. We can do a spaces thing. What's this thing called? Stages thing. We just kind of go through it, and then have open comments, questions, and then pre-snapshot or something like that. But yeah, hash, the IBC restructuring. We have dev working on it. Now, there is code being reviewed and worked on, and I have 14 messages from him directly that have come in during this call, so I'll be getting back to that right when I drop off. But yeah, it's coming together nicely, and obviously we need this we need the convex vote weight as the shot in the arm to really kind of make that impactful. And if look at the announcements, Will just posted the Badger flywheel post about how IBTC is kind of this core driver for really growing Badger's TVL, creating more yield for all vault depositors, which should create more additional benefits, from the performance fees that we can redistribute to the locking vault, and then that should help secure our vote weight in the convex ecosystem, convex and curve. So that should then secure higher yields for the Bitcoin vault sets. So that's we need the IBC restructuring to be kind of part of that, but we also need obviously to kind of get get in the game with the voting. So that's what we're hardcore focusing on right now is bribing strategy and how to incentivize people to delegate and deposit into the locking vault. So if you public service announcement, if you have not moved your BCVX into the locking vault, please do so. Take your time. I don't know where gas is right now. It's still in triple digits. I don't know. Please, if you get time, it's awesome to we want to just go ahead and get it in there. I think there's another vote in a week and a half or something like that. But we need as much Badger, as much CVX locked in the BVCX vault as possible. Is great. Helps drive better yields for all of the Bitcoin vaults. And we'll have more. We're coming out with more information on our voting strategy there as well. But please lock it up. We'll be coming out with more posts with some details about how we're going to be getting the handling bribing and then getting access to the bribes for the locked vault as well. So addressing all the different flows of assets that people care about. Cool. So I think we're good. Thanks everyone. If you have any follow-up questions, throw them in the chat. Catch you in 2 weeks.